Hello and welcome everyone to another exciting Myriad deck tech / deck updating. I am that damn pipsqueak, and right now we're going to be talking about At Any Madness combo. So, At Any Madness combo is a deck I truly love in this format because it's a deck that does not and cannot really exist anywhere else. It is a deck built around a combination of cards unique to Myriad, which is Embrace Madness and At Any Cost. So At Any Cost is from the Highlander set, and 1 black, sorcery, until end of turn, you can sacrifice a permanent or discard a card to add black. It combines this with Embrace Madness from Storytime, which is a card banned in MSEM due to its interaction with a land in World's Way that I am currently forgetting the name of that allows you to spend mana as though it were mana of any color. So for Embrace Madness, whenever you discard a card, you get a black mana and then can pay its costs. So if you have both of these at once, all the cards in your hand suddenly become worth 2 mana. And then you can potentially use that to chain through a bunch of the spells in your deck and eventually kill your opponent with a really big Mastery of the Veil. The deck is kind of horrifyingly resilient to a lot of disruption because of its ability to just, answer disruptive pieces. But we're going to be updating it since Love Song brought a bunch of new tech for the deck's mana base, and BTJ actually brought a bunch of cards that synergize with the deck's primary game plan. Additionally, some of the reworks that hit the format caused slight changes in the cards that it gets to run, so I should have to go ahead and start by removing those two. So the first thing I want to add, which is a thing you're going to notice a lot in these videos, is I want to go ahead and add Define Destiny to this deck. I don't think this card is mandatory in blue decks, but I think you need a good reason to not be running it, just like you need a good reason to not be running Synchronize, because I think the cantripping is really powerful. Looking at the rest of the deck that we still have, we have a little bit of fast mana, Forgotten Coin and Lazaire's Masterpiece being some of our starters, as is Lotus Fragment. We have Marinton-Ravengulch Line and the Northern Express Line. And then we also have a little pile of rituals, honestly, with Total Recall being a really powerful combination with both Vathi Siege-Mage and also a powerful combination with Embrace Madness, since then you're casting from the graveyard. I've been really disappointed with the looters in this deck. Hypothetically, they're really good for the deck's fair plan, and they have some cool synergy with Embrace Madness, but I think I'm going to cut them realistically. Curse of Broken Minds is kind of nice, and I do like the deck's fair backup plan with Dirty Work and Villainy. Alright, with that said, Black, E, BTJ. So, one of the cards I'm very excited to add to this deck from BTJ is Ambition's Promise, since this deck is a very powerful combo deck that just wants all of the tutors it can get its hands on, and it can win without its next untap step, potentially. If I'm remembering correctly, the next card that's fairly exciting. This card is kind of weird because it's very close to being an effect we want, but it isn't quite. It allows us to madness cards, but it doesn't net us mana while we're doing so. And I think the 3 mana 2/3 Death Touch isn't good enough. We give these cards a second to, load in. There we go. I don't hate Xanagan as a fair backup plan post board. Since we need to have a pivot plan for decks with enough interaction that we won't be able to do the stuff that we want to do. If this deck did play red, there is a blue-red card that works amazingly in this archetype, and there's an argument for the deck should be rebuilt to be able to take advantage of it, which is Desker, the Final Expulsion. But I think right now I would be inclined to not do that. Barden, some cool card selection, and probably better than the current looters we run, but I think this deck does a really bad job of protecting Planeswalkers, so I would be against including it right now. Channel Reminiscence is great for this deck. Like, actually fantastic. I also really like Desperate Infiltration for the sideboard for the matchups where we're going to go grinding people down. And I think otherwise, Mountain Intellect is kind of tempting, but I'm not certain that it's worth doing. Same thing for Branching Thoughts. Branching Thoughts is really good if we have Embrace Madness going, and okay otherwise, like it's a blue-blue Cathartic Reunion. Yeah, I think that's worth testing at least, but I'm not particularly excited about it. Looking at Love Song really quick. So this deck currently is trying to play discard more than counter magic. It's possible that not running Cosmic Sinkhole is just a mistake, but it's a mistake that I'm going to make for now. This deck is a amazing Dead Man's Party deck, though, so that's a very exciting pickup. Seeing this makes me realize that I really should build a powerful Whimsy deck in this format. I believe that's kind of all of the playable blue cards in Love Song for this list. I don't think Love Song, like, we don't really want this. I don't think we have, Find Happiness and Misery is probably better than some of the spells we're currently casting. I also think there's an argument for this, but I think since we don't have any synergy pieces with it, I think it has some active anti-synergies that I'm not remembering right now. It's not really worth it. Okay, beyond those initial changes, I think there's an argument for Far Too Young to Die, but probably in the sideboard, so let's go ahead and add that. Okay. And I guess we should also do colorless. This deck doesn't want any of those. Yeah, I didn't think there was going to be any colorless cards that it particularly wanted in Love Song. The lands it's going to want, but we'll get those in a second. And it doesn't want any of the Seal Cycle. Cool. Okay, so let's pop back to Love Song and let's add some more lands. So this is effectively a shock land that can sometimes be less painful if we want it to be less painful. Kind of want to try this. We don't have that intense color requirements. This is kind of cool in terms of improving our ability to filter. There's technically some slight synergy with this and Embrace Madness. Yeah, let's go ahead and add that for now. And we can remove some of the more painful cards that we were playing just to hit a base level of duels. Like these. God, we were down to having to run Drury Seedboard. That really says a lot about this deck. I think BTG's land cycle is not good for this deck. The other slot I was considering, I was in DOA's rework, since that added Mana Confluence and Renewal Grove. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and also move to our Seaboard. And I think this deck was at 18 lands when we started. Kind of hate Reverie Fields, but Reverie Fields is about to get better with us cutting basically all of our creatures. So I think I could also probably stay on 22 lands in this list. You really do want to hit most of your land drops. Technically not all of them, but enough of them that it's worth it. Did just add some more draw spells. I think we can cut 12,000 Eyes. I am not very sold on that card. One more cut. I think we're going to remove Aether Spark Charm. It's a little too cute it was in the stage where I was putting every single looter in this deck. This deck looks fairly reasonable. Let's see, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 13, 14, 15, 16 swamps, which is 17, I guess, which is not enough to cast Villainy on curve, but we have other mana sources, we have rituals, we could ritual out of Villainy, and we have a lot of card selection. So let's call that fine and move on. Sideboard-wise, so this deck is very much a combo deck. There is no control aspect to the main deck. There is no kind of pivot plan in the main... Like, you can sometimes grind people out with Dirty Work and Villainy, but I think that's not super realistic. It is a control deck. So, with that in mind, the sideboard is trying to do a little bit of juking, I guess. Since there are some matchups where you cannot actually combo. You will not be able to resolve the spells necessary to do what you are trying to do. Is Iron Signet... That's a slot that I also should reevaluate, Iron Signet, since when Iron Signet, I think, was first added to this deck, it was when it was in its pre-nerf version. That might be very incorrect, however. Stormwracked Voyage is a card that we can board in when we're trying to, like, outfare people. Desperate Infiltration is similarly good versus those decks. I think Union Rail Strikebreaker is a little too fragile, but maybe that's incorrect. Irika is nice because she also can come in versus aggro. Burn Defector might also be too fragile. This is just another hand attack spell that's okay at grinding people out. We have two board wipes in the form of Cloudkill and Violent Collapse. I don't think Heaven Bolt is good in this deck. We have a bunch of cheap removal. I think Alone at Sea is probably not very good. It's technically okay at removing hate pieces on the board, but I think most of the hate pieces in this format for this deck are going to be creatures, so we're going to go ahead and remove that as well. The more I've thought about, the more Xanagan I think is kind of uncastable in this deck. Again, we're a 22 land deck. Although I guess if we ritual her out, she's good. Maybe we're boarding her in against aggro enough that that's worthwhile. Like if we board in her plus some board wipes versus aggro, that seems kind of reasonable. So versus control, the Scepter of the High Cities kind of here as like this, aha, we can become the Monarch. But I think all of the control decks in this format have the ability to put pressure on us. So I think we are going to also remove Throne the High City. So I kind of like this version. So now that we've kind of gone through and updated the deck, I'm going to give another kind of rundown of the deck since I kind of brushed through that phase a little bit faster than I should have. So again, this is a combo deck. We're trying to assemble a 2-card combo that allows us to turn all of our lands in play and all of our cards in hand into mana while also still being able to cast the cards in hand. And through this mana, we're hoping to cantrip a bunch. We're hoping to use Dirty Work or Villainy or Lich's Legacy to also continue to cantrip and burn people out. We can ritual up also towards being able to cast a very large X spell, which can immediately kill our opponent. And there's a bunch of little incidental synergies. So this card Pilfer is really cute. It's less good in the deck now than it was before, but the base case of 1 black, you draw a card and lose 1 life is kind of good enough in this deck, is the truth. But if you cast a card from your graveyard with Embrace Madness, that'll recur with this. If you get selectively grave-hated, or if you cast an Increasing Dedication from the graveyard, that'll recur that. So there's only a couple of synergies. It used to go off, I think, something due to discard a card. So this deck could repeatedly recur it multiple times on turn, which was very, very powerful. But I think as is, this deck still has a good shot of utilizing it. And again, it being a black cantrip is really where this deck wants to be. Points-wise, this deck is spending them on Vathi Siege-Mage because they can find Dubious Tutor, which can in turn find the combo pieces. It can also find Embrace Madness directly, so it's also redundancy on a comp piece. It's running Dubious Tutor, as mentioned, because this is a combo deck. Dubious Tutor gives you a lot of leverage. And it's running Seeking the City because actually this card is very good in combo decks, since once you flip it, Finding Only Ruin allows you to churn through your entire deck incredibly quickly and kill your opponent. Finding Only Ruin is busted with these mana rocks. There's a chance this deck should be playing Hellbent Speed, but that was in the earlier versions of this deck. It was cut ultimately because it was kind of underwhelming. But it's possible someone else's build would be better off on it. To Dream a Ship is this deck's last 2-point card. It's a 4-mana wheel that also tucks the wheel back into your deck. So if you can burn through the next cards, you can potentially get back to it. In general, one of the few issues this deck has is it has a bunch of powerful black rituals, and then it needs to rely on blue card draw at least in a couple of spots. So there's a good chance this deck should also alternatively be on... there's a chance this deck should run Fallback Plan since it's a combo deck, but I think Fallback Plan is a little bit too awkward if you draw partially through comboing. I forgot about the Rework to Gate to the Beyond. That probably makes this card pretty good in this deck. It takes a little bit of effort, but it's really good, especially post-board, at grinding people out. So let's add that to the board. And I think that's going to take Burn Defector's spot, because Burn Defector dies very easily and also costs us more life. And the other draw spell I was thinking of... sorry, I know it was from BTJ, but I also... Okay, this was the card I was thinking of. I think it's incorrect to put this in this deck because 4 mana is a lot of mana for a instant speed Read the Bones. Like, that is the correct cost, but it's not where we want to be. But at the same time, we generally are kind of waiting and sculpting and trying to put together the ideal hand, which means we aren't going to be able to leverage the blood cast because we will have already used our life as a resource. Okay, so hopefully y'all enjoyed that. If you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the comments below. And I would highly recommend you all play Myriad. The format is genuinely great. And I'm hoping to do more of these deck techs and also maybe a video kind of breaking down what Myriad is and why the points list is what it is. So yep, thank you all for stopping by.